The moment the phone rang that afternoon, Sarah's heart sank. Her son, Jamie, had been suspended from school. But this time, it wasn't for fighting or skipping class. The principal's voice was cold and official. "Mrs. Thompson, your son was sent to the office for disruptive behavior." Sarah's breath caught. What happened exactly? "He was talking to someone who isn't there," the principal explained, with a tone that felt more like accusation than concern. Sarah blinked, confused. "Talking to who?" The principal sighed. "An imaginary friend? Jamie insists he's real and it's distracting the other students. We had to take action." Sarah's throat tightened. Jamie was only 8 years old. Wasn't imagination part of childhood? Wasn't it normal to have imaginary friends? But now her son was labeled a problem, misunderstood, and punished. When Sarah got home, Jamie was waiting, sitting cross-legged on the worn-out living room rug, a quiet smile on his face. "Mom," he said softly, "I told you, his name is Max." Sarah forced a smile, kneeling beside him. "Max? Who's Max?" Jamie's eyes sparkled with innocence. "He's my friend. He helps me when I'm scared." Sarah's heart ached. Her little boy, sensitive and shy, was being shunned for something she couldn't see, a friend only he could hear. That night, as Jamie slept, Sarah sat awake, tears brimming. The school's harshness gnawed at her, punishing a child for loneliness, for vulnerability. Days passed, and Jamie's suspension stood firm. Sarah reached out to the school board, explaining Jamie's condition, that he struggled with social anxiety and relied on Max for comfort. But the response was cold. "Rules are rules," the board wrote back. "Classroom focus must be maintained." Sarah's frustration deepened. How could a place meant to nurture children punish the very traits that made Jamie unique? In quiet moments, Jamie would speak to Max in the park where no one could see. "Max says, 'It's not fair,'" Jamie whispered one afternoon, voice cracking. Sarah hugged him fiercely. "I know, sweetheart. I'm trying to make it right." One rainy evening, after putting Jamie to bed, Sarah heard a faint voice. At first, she thought it was her imagination. Then she saw it, a shadow in the corner, shimmering softly, just beyond the edge of the lamp's glow. "Who's there?" she asked, heart racing. No answer. She blinked and it vanished. Was she losing her mind? Or was Jamie's world more real than she thought? Sarah began to research. She uncovered stories of children labeled disruptive or delusional, simply for expressing their inner worlds. Schools punishing creativity, silencing difference. Children forced to conform, to hide pain and fear beneath a mask of normalcy. The more Sarah read, the heavier her heart grew. It wasn't just Jamie, it was a systemic problem. One afternoon, Jamie handed Sarah a crumpled note. "Max gave it to me," he said. Sarah unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was delicate, unfamiliar. "They don't understand me. They don't understand you. But we will protect each other." Sarah's pulse quickened. Who was Max really? Could this invisible friend be more than just a figment of a lonely child's imagination? Or was something deeper, darker at play? That night, Sarah lay awake, the note clutched tightly in her hand. Suddenly, a whisper echoed through the room. "Mom, Max says you're ready to see." A cold breeze brushed her skin. The room grew darker. And then, standing just beyond the shadows, Sarah saw him. Max. The air in the room felt thicker now, heavier, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Sarah's breath hitched as her eyes struggled to adjust. There, at the edge of the shadowed corner, stood a figure, a boy about Jamie's age, but translucent, glowing faintly like a fragile flame. Max. His eyes met Sarah's, deep pools of something ancient and knowing. "Mom?" Jamie's voice trembled from his bedroom doorway. "You can see him?" Sarah nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Jamie, I see him." Max stepped forward, a hesitant smile curling at the edge of his lips. "I've been with your son for a long time," he said softly. "Not just a friend, a guardian." Sarah swallowed hard, heart pounding. "How is this possible?" she asked. Max's gaze shifted to Jamie. Jamie needed protection from fear, from loneliness, from a world that didn't understand him. Sarah felt tears blur her vision. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Max's form flickered like a candle struggling in the wind. "They tried, but fear makes people blind, and some prefer ignorance to truth." The next morning, Sarah sat with Jamie at the kitchen table. "Jamie, do you remember when Max first came to you?" Jamie nodded, eyes wide but calm. "I was scared. Kids made fun of me. I felt alone." Sarah reached out, squeezing his hand. No child should feel alone, especially at school. Jamie's face crumpled. They said I was lying, that Max wasn't real, so I stopped talking to him, but he never left. Sarah's heart broke. The school had punished Jamie for the one thing that kept him safe. A child punished for needing comfort. Determined, Sarah began fighting harder. She contacted therapists, child psychologists, anyone who would listen. One expert, Dr. Harper, listened carefully. Imaginary friends can be a coping mechanism, Dr. Harper explained, especially in children facing anxiety or trauma. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. If we can help Jamie, maybe the school will understand. But the battle was far from over. One afternoon, Sarah found a letter slipped under their door. No sender, no return address. Just 3 words, written in a shaky hand. He sees everything. Her stomach churned. Who was watching? Was Max really just a friend or something else entirely? Jamie clung to her, whispering, "Max says we have to be careful." That night, unable to sleep, Sarah decided to follow Jamie's footsteps. Quietly, she ventured outside into the chilly night air. The street was empty, the world hushed. As she walked toward the park where Jamie often talked to Max, a faint glow flickered near the old oak tree. She approached, heart pounding, and there, sitting on the bench, was Max. But this time, his glow was brighter, his expression grave. "Sarah," he said, voice urgent, "there's something you need to know. Jamie's not the only one." Sarah's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Max's eyes darkened. "There are others like Jamie, and the school's punishment is just the beginning." A sudden noise broke the silence. Footsteps pounding on the pavement. Sarah spun around. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, face hidden beneath a hood. "You shouldn't be here," the stranger hissed. Max stepped protectively in front of Sarah and Jamie. "They're coming for us." Sarah's heart raced. "Who are they? What do they want?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, a chilling laugh echoed through the night. And then, the stranger vanished, leaving only one word whispered on the wind: control. The chill of the night air seemed to freeze Sarah in place, her heart hammering against her ribs. The word control echoed in her mind, a heavy weight pressing down on her thoughts. The shadowy figure had vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, but the warning lingered, sharp and cold. Max stood firm, his glow dimming slightly as he surveyed the empty street. "Sarah," he said quietly, "there's something you need to understand. Jamie's experience isn't isolated. There's a system, an invisible force that suppresses children like him, children who see beyond what others can." Sarah's fingers trembled as she clutched Jamie's hand tightly. Why? Why would they do this? Max's expression grew somber. Because fear breeds control. If they can silence the invisible, the misunderstood, they can maintain their power. Days passed, and Sarah found herself falling deeper into a world she never knew existed, a secret network of children with invisible guardians, like Jamie and Max. She learned that these children were often dismissed, labeled troubled, or worse, punished for what adults refused to see. Sarah's outrage simmered beneath her calm exterior. She sat in a cramped coffee shop with a group of parents, all sharing similar stories. One mother, eyes red-rimmed from tears, said, "They told my daughter she was lying about her friend. Now she won't speak to anyone." Sarah nodded, the pain mirrored in her own heart. "We have to fight back," she said, voice firm, "for our children, for the truth." Determined to understand the full extent of the injustice, Sarah requested Jamie's school records. What she found shocked her. Notes of warnings from teachers, reports of disruptive behavior, even references to psychological evaluation. But buried beneath the official records was something darker. Emails between administrators discussing a policy to identify and isolate children who exhibit non-conforming behavior. One message stood out. "These children pose a risk to the school's order. Immediate intervention is necessary." Sarah's hands shook. This wasn't just ignorance or misunderstanding. It was a deliberate campaign to silence and control vulnerable children. Sarah arranged a meeting with the school board. The room was sterile, the air thick with authority and dismissal. As she presented her findings, the board members exchanged cold glances. One woman said, "We must prioritize the safety and focus of all students. Individual cases cannot disrupt the whole." Sarah's voice rose, fueled by desperation and rage. "But at what cost? You're punishing children for their imaginations, for their coping mechanisms. You're destroying their trust, their sense of self." The room fell silent. Then the principal leaned forward, voice low but firm. "Mrs. Thompson, rules exist for a reason. We cannot cater to every delusion." Back home, Jamie grew quieter, retreating deeper into himself. One evening, Sarah found him staring out the window, tears silently tracing his cheeks. "Mom," he whispered, voice barely audible, "I'm scared they'll take Max away." Sarah pulled him close, heart aching. "They won't, Jamie, I promise." But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. How do you protect a child from a system designed to erase who they are? Just as despair threatened to consume her, Sarah received an encrypted message from an unknown sender. "You're not alone. Meet me at the old library tomorrow at noon. Answers await." The message sent a ripple of fear and hope through Sarah. Could this be someone who understood? Someone who could help? The next day, under a gray sky, Sarah arrived at the abandoned library. Inside, dust motes danced in the cold light. A figure stepped from the shadows, a man mid-30s, eyes sharp and kind. "I'm Elias," he said quietly. "I was once like Jamie. I've seen what they're capable of." Sarah's breath caught. Who are they? What do they want? Elias smiled sadly. Control, fear, power, and there's more at stake than you know. Before Sarah could ask more, a sudden crash echoed from the library entrance. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Elias's eyes darkened. "They found us." Sarah's heart leapt. "Who? What do we do?" Elias grabbed her arm, urgency crackling between them. "We run, now." As they hurried toward the back exit, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, cold, relentless. A voice cut through the air. "You cannot hide from the truth, Sarah. It will consume you all." And then, everything went black. A faint ringing in Sarah's ears. The hard floor beneath her cheek. A distant voice. Jamie's voice? No, not Jamie. Someone older, calmer. "Sarah, wake up. We don't have time." She blinked against the darkness, her vision clearing just enough to see Elias crouched beside her, bruised and breathing hard. They were no longer in the library. They were in a narrow concrete corridor, lit by dim, flickering bulbs. Sarah sat up slowly, wincing as pain surged down her side. What just happened? Where are we?" Elias glanced behind them. "We're underground. An old Cold War shelter built beneath the town. The group that controls the school uses it as one of their containment zones now. I knew about this place, but I didn't think they'd move so fast." As Sarah struggled to stand, a flood of fear and confusion returned. "The voice in the dark," she said hoarsely. "It knew my name. It said the truth would consume us." Elias helped her up. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. You've stepped into something that's been buried for decades, and it has everything to do with Jamie and Max. Sarah's mind raced. "You said you were once like Jamie," she said, eyes narrowing. "What did you mean by that?" Elias hesitated, just a beat too long. "I had a friend just like Max. His name was Felix. He appeared when I was 7 and stayed until I turned 13. Then one day he vanished." He paused. "Or they made him vanish." As they walked cautiously through the passageway, Elias led her to a locked steel door. With a stolen keycard, he opened it, revealing a small room filled with dusty filing cabinets and a flickering computer terminal. "This is their archive," he explained. "Every child they've labeled imaginatively unstable is documented here, including me, including Jamie." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What do they do to them?" Elias looked down. "Some are medicated until their friend disappears. Others are sent away, special institutions. The worst ones are erased. Not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. Their memories rewritten, their reality bent until they forget." Sarah's voice cracked. "That's abuse. That's monstrous. It's how they maintain order." Elias booted the computer. As the old machine sputtered to life, Sarah began rifling through physical files. One folder caught her eye. It was labeled Thompson Sarah File Closed. Her hands trembled as she opened it. There were handwritten notes, scans of old drawings, a psychologist's report dated. Subject exhibits persistent attachment to a non-physical entity referred to as Luma. Describes Luma as protective, ever-present, and communicative. No signs of schizophrenia or trauma. Entity responds to emotional stress, appears to possess independent agency. Recommend memory modulation therapy if symptoms persist beyond age 8. Sarah dropped the folder as if it burned her. "No, that can't be me." Elias turned slowly. "It is. You're telling me I had an invisible friend. One I don't even remember." He nodded. "They made you forget, and now your son is remembering for you." Sarah sat down heavily, the room spinning. Had her parents known? Had they let it happen? The silence of her childhood, the therapy visits, the imagination her mother dismissed, the strange gaps in memory, all of it now screamed for attention. And then she realized Jamie wasn't just gifted. He was inheriting something. "I need to see him," she whispered. "Now." Elias's face tightened. "We don't have much time. They know you're awake. And if they reach Jamie first..." A loud alarm blared through the shelter. "They already have." They ran through corridors that smelled of mold and iron, heartbeats pounding louder than the sirens. Above them, footsteps echoed. Heavy, coordinated. Sarah's legs ached, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but the thought of Jamie in danger propelled her forward. They emerged into the rear of a maintenance tunnel, and there, blocking the exit, were two figures in black uniforms. Elias didn't hesitate. He charged at them with a makeshift pipe. "Run!" he shouted. Sarah bolted past the chaos. Scrambling through the narrow escape hatch, she emerged in an overgrown garden behind the school. And there, across the yard, stood Jamie. Alone, still, pale. She ran to him. "Jamie! Oh my God, Jamie!" But he turned slowly, and Sarah's scream caught in her throat, because Jamie's eyes weren't his. They were glowing, faintly blue, softly inhuman, and when he spoke, it wasn't his voice. "I told you the truth would consume you, Sarah." The eyes staring back at Sarah were not Jamie's. They shimmered, not with tears or fear, but with an unearthly light, a quiet storm glowing beneath his pupils. And the voice that came from her son's small frame, it chilled her bones. "I told you the truth would consume you, Sarah." She staggered backward. "No," she whispered, "this isn't happening." But Jamie stepped forward calmly, and as he did, the glow in his eyes dimmed, his expression softened. The strange presence that had spoken seemed to retreat, and then it was her boy again. "Mom," he blinked, "why are you crying?" She fell to her knees and pulled him into her arms. You're okay, she sobbed. "I've got you." But in her heart, she knew the truth. Something had awakened in Jamie, and whatever it was, it had always been inside him. Later that night, in Elias's hidden cabin miles outside town, Sarah sat at the table while Jamie slept on the couch. Elias spread out files, diagrams, and photos on the table, each one more disturbing than the last. "I think it's time you knew," he said. "They call them Children of the Veil. That's what the program was originally named. Kids who can connect to what they call residual consciousness, spirits, entities, or maybe echoes of people who were once alive but never moved on." Sarah scanned the reports. Dates going back to the 1950s. Schools, institutions, disappearances. "And Max?" she asked. Elias nodded. He was one of them. "But not a spirit," Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias looked her straight in the eyes. "Max was a boy. A real one. Lived in this town, died in 1999. And no one talks about how." Sarah's heart began to race. She searched the old town records Elias had uncovered. There it was. Max Riley, age 7, died May 18, 1998. Cause: fall from school rooftop. No witnesses. Case closed. But on the back of the death certificate was a redacted note. Subject may have exhibited abilities similar to V-class children. Containment failed. Incident closed to avoid replication. Sarah felt sick. Jamie hadn't created Max. He had found him, or Max had found him. And now, Max was part of Jamie. "I saw Max," she whispered, "in the library. He touched my hand. I felt him." Elias leaned in. "Because you're like Jamie, and you always have been. You were just conditioned to forget." Sarah sat alone that night beside Jamie, watching him breathe. He looked so peaceful. But deep inside, she knew the peace was temporary. The program, the people who ran it, wouldn't let this go. Jamie was a threat to their silence, and she had become a whistleblower. A soft breeze drifted through the open window. For a moment, Sarah thought she heard something in it. A whisper. "Help me remember." Her breath caught. She turned to see Jamie staring at her in the dark. "Max says he wants to show you something," he said softly. Sarah blinked. "What?" Jamie stood and reached out his hand. The room darkened, the air thickened, and suddenly, she was no longer in the cabin. Sarah stood in a field she hadn't seen in 20 years. The old swing set, the abandoned school, the cherry tree with initials carved in its bark. This wasn't a memory. It was something else, deeper, a place between. And beside her stood a boy in old jeans and a faded hoodie. Max. He turned to her with sorrow in his eyes. "They pushed me," he said quietly, "because I saw things, because I made the shadows dance. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Sarah felt her chest tighten. I believe you, she whispered. He smiled. You were like me too once. You saw them too. But they made you forget, and they'll do it again if you let them. Suddenly, the sky above them cracked with a loud snap. The world shimmered. Sarah grabbed Max's hand. Wait, tell me how to stop them. Max's voice echoed as the world dissolved.
Protect the ones who remember.
Sarah woke gasping on the floor. Jamie was already up watching cartoons, acting like nothing had happened. But Sarah knew better now. She had seen the truth. Not all imaginary friends are imaginary. Some are lost souls. Some are pieces of us that others try to erase. And some are messengers of something much bigger. 3 days later, Sarah stood at the gates of the school, not to drop Jamie off, but to confront the Board of Education. Armed with evidence Elias had gathered, she prepared to expose everything: the secret files, the experimental treatments, the lies told to grieving parents and confused children. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a survivor, a protector, a witness. But as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop now, or Jamie won't be the only one who disappears. Sarah stared at the screen. Her hands trembled, but instead of fear, she felt fire. She looked up at the sky. Let them come, she whispered. I'm not afraid anymore. Moral reflection. We live in a world that too often silences the voices that don't fit. But what if those voices carry truths we're too scared to hear? What if the people we label as different are simply tuned into a frequency we've forgotten? What would you do if your child could see what you were forced to forget? Would you protect them or hide them? Share your thoughts in the comments. What lesson do you take away from Jamie and Max's story?